Our next guest brings the perfect combination to tell this story. He's a bicyclist and a filmmaker. Chris Carter took his camera and bike out one day to capture how much has changed in recent years when it comes to bicycling behavior. Here's Chris.
Cyclists, I think here in Boston and maybe all big cities, USA, would fall into a couple categories. There are the spandex cyclists, the fitness oriented. There's the hipster crew. Those folks are usually influenced heavily by the couriers. Then there are the transportation folks, which are the commuters that are trying to get from A to B. A lot of Gore-Tex, a lot of weatherproof. And now there's the hubway. And the hubway, I think, has brought on a whole new demographic of people that aren't really in any of those things.
I'm Chris Carter, and I fit into a few of those categories. I use hubway, I ride my bike long distances, but when asked what kind of cyclist I am, I usually say...
Commuter?
I'm a commuter.
I am a commuter cycler.
I'm a commuting cyclist, and chances are you're seeing a lot more of us on your daily trip to work. According to the American Community Survey, bicycle commuting in Massachusetts has grown 80% in the last 10 years. And with that rapid growth, a whole new community has developed.
I think that maybe 10 years ago, there was a lot of camaraderie based around, you know, we're doing this together, like it's a survival thing. Like now it's a strength in numbers kind of thing. You know, all of a sudden it's not cool to run through a red light because there's 5 people, 10 people, 20 people waiting at a red light. That's new, that's very new. You look at folks sharing a red light together, and that's a moment that, you know, folks don't have that in cars, they don't have that in cabs. You don't roll down your window and ask the person next to you, you know, how's your day? What's going on? Where are you going? I like your cab. But people do that on 2 wheels.
When you're pushing against the same wind, when you're enduring the same cold, or when you're feeling that same wonderful warm sun on you, that you share that. There's no camaraderie like that when you're driving cars. Everybody's, you know, they're all frustrated with the traffic, but that's not camaraderie.
Although the streets have more people riding bicycles in them, there's still a common refrain among cyclists about the best way to improve their commute.
I love biking in Cambridge where there are bike lanes.
More and wider bike lanes?
Number one is bike lanes. Bike lanes are huge.
An emphasis needs to be put on maintaining bike lanes.
I understand the streets are narrow, but it certainly makes biking in downtown where there are no bike paths really, really hazardous.
While the majority of the riders I spoke with felt that bike lanes improve the street, there's a small subset of bicycle commuters known as vehicular cyclists who disagree.
My name is John Allen. I've been involved in bicycling advocacy in the Boston area since the late 1970s. If you operate a bicycle on the principle that this is my space over here and that's the car space over here, then it's going to be a turf war. And that's what's unfortunate about it. The bike lane is in the door zone, and someone who rides in it is going to be in trouble if a car door opens.
Of course, the argument can also be made that bike lanes don't just help cyclists, but they actually provide order for all road users.
Drivers, they like it better if there's a marked bike lane in the road, then they know just where the bike is going to be, and bicyclists like it a lot better when there's a marked bike lane.
Multiple studies show that bicycle ridership and safety increase with the presence of bike lanes and bike paths. And just as more bike lanes appeared on our streets, the community who commutes on 2 wheels to work each day has flourished.
All right, and Chris Carter is here along with Harvard Law professor and cyclist Noah Feldman and Jackie Douglas, a biking and walking advocate and executive director of Livable Streets. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So I've got 3 bikers here. I got to ask, has any one of you ever been in a serious accident?
Thankfully, I've not, but you know, the degree of separation from knowing somebody that has been is not far. So I do know cyclists that have been.
Have either of you?
No, fortunately not.
That's amazing when you think about it, because when I was driving around, especially when I was on really crowded streets like Huntington Avenue and those places, I really felt like the bicyclist was in danger. I mean, in serious danger from those trolleys or, you know. Do you try to avoid streets like that?
Yeah, I think the longer you ride in a place, you get to sort of know the routes that feel better and more comfortable for you. So for For me, I live near Huntington Avenue, and I select other routes. The Southwest Corridor almost parallels it, and that's a good option. You know, you do have to use those main roads sometimes, but a lot of cyclists will sort of re-navigate the city based on what feels like it doesn't have as much stress.
Boston gets pretty good grades for, you know, a biking city. I mean, it's not #1 or anything, it's like number 11, but no, you've bicycled all over the world and wrote a column actually about a piece about Beijing that used to be a big biking city, and now nobody bikes, which is hilarious. So that's our stereotype is everybody over there is on a bicycle.
And that was true as recently as 10 years ago, but things can change really fast, and they can get better, and they can also get a lot worse. And what happened in Beijing is as more people got cars, it got harder and harder to bike. The pollution got worse and worse and worse. The traffic got worse and worse and worse. And suddenly the incentive to be on a bike was much reduced. Here, it's a lot easier to bike than it was 10 years ago. So small changes can make an enormous difference.
Why is it easier here now?
The bike lanes are a big part of that. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And a lot of it really is the sense of more people doing it. That causes the drivers to be a little bit more careful. It causes the cyclists to be a little bit more sensible. And the more people do something, the more normalized it becomes, and over time, the safer it becomes.
What is livable streets to it? Is there a lobby, by the way, for bicycles, Laura? I mean,
we're not a
Jackie,
formal
sir?
lobby. We're just advocates working to rethink urban transportation in the Boston region. So inspire a vision of what transportation can be like in the Boston region, looking at best practices from around the world and trying to improve our streets both for people to be able to bike, be able to walk, and also for public transportation. So people have choices for how to get around. And it's livable streets because it's about health and community and the environment and place where you can raise your children and grow old and I'm surprised there isn't a more organized bike lobby, a group that people represents you all at the State House and everywhere else.
There's a number of groups, in Boston and Cambridge and Somerville and Brookline that do exactly what Jackie was talking about, which is sort of organizing people. And they tend to speak very loudly when cities and towns are doing things. So, maybe not a formalized lobby, but there's a big sense of community among cyclists, depending on what type of cyclist they might be.
But I also think it's important to remember that it's not that there's just a type of person who's a cycist. Cyclists aren't a special interest group.
Yeah, we can see that.
And I think it could be anybody, really. And I think people move in and out of that. I mean, I drive my car when, it's icy and cold, or, I'm going a longer distance. And so we're in and out of these positions and roles all the time. I think it's important.
Do you feel some chagrin, though, when you see, when we were really looking at all the different types of people who ride bikes? I mean, there are people just doing the craziest stuff, and then people who are really professional, and whether they were commuters or serious athletic bikers, but just this range, you want to tap some of these people and say, what are you doing? As a bike enthusiast, don't you get frustrated?
It is frustrating, and because I drive and walk and take transit, and it's frustrating to see, and that's where we really focus on infrastructure to look at how can we make the street design, whether it's separated bicycle lanes or the need to improve our traffic signalization and other little improvements where the devil's in the details. So there's this idea of give respect, get respect, that we can provide in the city.
Also, Emily, you should remember that this is Boston, right? I mean, I'm a lifelong Bostonian. If you did the same film and watched the crazy things that drivers do,
oh, I know.
It would probably be much, much more extreme.
Well,
I mean, that's part of what it is to be.
For that matter.
No, really. All the jaywalking and everything, it drives me crazy, especially on the weekends.
But we think it's our constitutional right as Bostonians.
So, whatever mode of travel you're in Boston, that's the one that you feel is preferred at that time. And I think we're talking about behavior change in our city to get to a safer place.
All right, tell me the whole thinking on the helmet thing, because I really was stunned to discover it was about 50-50. And I ski also, and it used to be that nobody wore a helmet. Now everybody does. It's 90-10. And I just assumed it would be the same thing with the biking community, but it's not. Why not?
I think part of it's about convenience for people. If they have their helmet with them, they wear it. If they don't, they don't. But
you wouldn't just automatically have that?
I always ride with a helmet, and a lot of people I know do. And certainly when I was talking with commuter cyclists in that piece of the film, most of those people were wearing helmets as well. I think if it's part of their daily routine, it becomes something that you become accustomed to doing.
I also think there's some element of, I do, but there is some element of, anarchy is too strong a word, but some element of joy, some connection to being a kid. That's one of the reasons it's fun to be on a bike. And most of us didn't wear helmets at least of my age, didn't wear helmets when we were kids.
Of course not.
And so
we didn't wear seat belts either.
Yeah,
Right.
that's also true. And there's some element of it there. So some of that probably is just culture and change. And a generation of people who grew up wearing helmets will not find that it takes away their pleasure to wear a helmet.
Yeah. How about you, Jackie?
I do wear a helmet, but I also think back to I lived in the Netherlands when I was a kid, and no one wore helmets, but the degree of safety with their infrastructure and the amount of people biking and the separated paths and the crash rates were so little that it was possible. So
we asked people to comment on our Facebook page as we've been developing this right-of-way series, and here's a comment from somebody. While most people point fingers at drivers, walkers, and bikers for problems, I blame poor planning. Town planners have narrowed roadways and widened sidewalks and squeezed bicycles with motor vehicles. Well, that's true in some communities. It's not true in others. I mean, some communities don't even have sidewalks, and they don't have bike lanes either. So, I mean, it really depends on where you live.
It does. Yeah. And, there's not an infinite amount of road space out there, but people that always say, oh, Boston is an old city, Cambridge is an old city, has narrow roadways. I mean, look at any European city that is transformed into sort of being a cycling utopia. They're older and the streets are more narrow there. So there are ways to do it.
The old cow paths, which make up our streets, are a blessing for us, really, because it means we don't have the laid-out grid. When you have a laid-out grid like you do in New York, the light changes, the cars just start to go, and they go 60 miles an hour until the next light when they stop. That never happens in Boston. It's a little scary driving in Boston sometimes, and you have to be very careful if you're biking, too. But nothing happens all that fast, and that's actually a plus.
Yeah, and the debate is how to move people around efficiently and safely through our city, and as the population increases and more people live here, I hope we can go beyond bicyclist versus driver, and it's people who choose to go to the shop by bike, but they might drive to work, and then they might take the bus to, to their friend's house. And so how do we start to move people? And so we have to start thinking about how we reallocate our public space, which is the majority of our public space is our streets, to accommodate what we want. And
would you all prefer to be driving on a city street, riding on a city street, or a rural neighborhood? Because in some ways, at least, there's a lot of traffic, so there's anticipation. But when somebody is just roaring around a corner on some country road, they're not looking for a bicyclist.
On a city street, obviously, there's more that you have to pay attention to. There's pedestrians, there's transit, there's cars. And a rural environment, the speeds might be faster. So, it's a give and take for me. Depending on what type of riding I'm doing, it's a different experience.
Same with all of you?
Yeah, I mean, they're just totally different environments, and it feels completely different to be doing it. And safety certainly is the case, but also the fun of it is different. There's fun to being on a bike in a city. You see things, you interact with things. It's much closer to being a pedestrian than it is to be in a car. And in a rural area, you have the joy of being outdoors, and that's a separate and independent kind of pleasure.
Do y'all blow red lights?
No.
Come on.
No, but I think it would be great to start seeing things like bicycle signals and other changes, so that I wouldn't be tempted.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jackie Douglas, Noah Feldman, and Chris Carter. Thanks for coming.